Himalayan, media launch 2023, full chaos. It's no secret that I've been a fan of the Himalayan, been a massive fan of the Hemi for a long time. Just its simple, chugging nature. It's not a high performance bike, they never pretended it was. Just brilliant, cheap, simple little thing. And what they've done with this new one is they've taken that kind of rugged, roughy tufty thing and just addressed a few of the bits that you found yourself making excuses for a lot of the time. They've given it a little bit more horsepower. Again, it's not an absolute monster, it's still a gentle bike to ride, a gentle engine, but they've given it enough power that you can overtake stuff and razz around a bit more, and a bit more capable on the really gnarly off-road stuff when you need some horsepower to get up a hill. Actually, I think where they've improved it most is the chassis. The old one, you kind of drifted your way through corners. It is not the same as riding in Europe. As far as I can tell, the rule is do anything you like, but beep first. That seems to be the rule. If you can get through the gap, if you can get past someone, be that on the left, the right, over the top of them, it doesn't matter. Do what you like. But be aware that someone's going to do it to you at the same time. I love it.
Right, let's get one thing straight. If you're in India, it's Himalayan. If you're in the UK, you can call it Himalayan. Because I can't take the abuse you lot are going to give me, we're just going to call it the Hemi. Everyone good with that? This is the long-awaited update to Royal Enfield's Himalayan kind of mini adventure bike. The original bike was such a huge hit in the UK, kind of unexpectedly, because it found itself a niche for being really, really good value, easy to ride and unintimidating. No, it was not fast. No, you couldn't sit on the motorway at 80 mile an hour on it, but it just hit something in a lot of people that was missing from adventure bike world. It was unintimidating. It wasn't designed to go fast, it wasn't designed to be awesome, it just got the job done. That was 2016. It's been a long time coming, this update, and Royal Enfield reckon they've kept all that good stuff about the old one, but given the bike a bit more range, giving it the ability to go faster, tackle tougher terrain, and cruise at speeds on motorways. Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to come here, ride like a complete dick, and put a smile on my face.
Look at that. What a place. What a view. Every corner you go around here is nuts, and we've only scratched the surface so far. This is like a tiny, tiny speck of the Himalayas that we've ridden in, and there is mile upon mile upon mile of crazy road, fun road, amazing tracks, ridiculous views. And I get what they're saying. Like, out here, this feels like the bike for the job. I've not really found myself wanting any, if any more power. And the way it's kind of chilled out, smashes through stuff, gets the job done. It's not the sort of place where you need 160 brake out here, and it's kind of not the place you can use it. What I always liked about the Hemi is that it was a proper thrashable little bike. It was never going to be the quickest thing on the road. You could just grab hold of it and wring its neck and just charge around on it, and it just made you smile. And now we've got that again, just with 40 horsepower. Before, I loved riding it, but as your only bike, it would have been quite tricky to live with, especially if you did any big motorway miles, or liked a Sunday ride out on a fast A road. Now it's a much more livable thing. It's still a Hemi, it's still got that same feel, that same I can go anywhere and I can do it forever ride to it, but now there's a little bit of power to have a bit more fun along the way. It is actually a really nice thing to ride. If you think about what bikes this competes against, it's that kind of lightweight 300 and something cc adventure bike. It's not quite where the CRF 300 is, that's very much more in the dirt bike camp. This is more of an adventure bike than that, even than the CRF 300 Rally. And when you compare it to things like the 310 GS, the KTM 390, that's what you need to look at this bike in the light of. It feels, it always has done, but it always feels more substantial than any of them. It's got a big, nice, solid feel to it, whereas they feel plasticky and rattly and thrashy. This has got a little bit more bottom end power to it, and just a little bit more of a proper full-size bike feel to it. Those ones always feel a little bit tinny and plasticky, and previously they got away with that because they were miles faster than the old Himalayan. They got away with it because, yeah, they would actually run rings around it on a road like this. But now this has hoiked that advantage back, and you get something that's far more substantial but equally as fun and playful.
Whoa. Let's just hold it there for a minute, because there's actually more to this story than just the launch. I've got to be honest, this isn't the first time I've ridden that bike. About 5 years ago, I got a phone call from some friends back when I used to have a proper job and be a useful human being, that wanted some help organising a ride out to kind of decide the concept for a new bike. That was this bike. And over the last 5 years, I've kind of been helping out, involved, having a little bit of input into what the bike becomes, where it ends up, and ultimately what makes a great budget adventure bike. So over that time, I've got to know kind of most of the people working on this bike and been involved in the story. And I think it's something I want to share a little bit of with you now, because on the outside, all you see is a big company and bikes being puked out the end of it for us to ride and go, yeah, they're great, no, they're shit. We don't really see the people and the process involved in taking an idea to update a bike and turning that into the reality, into the model that gets launched to journalists like me around the world who get to go, oh, I don't like the colours, or the handlebar grips are fat. So this is a little bit of an insight into what it takes to make one of these. So the story starts with kind of an idea and what's called like a character bike. So Royal Enfield developed what they thought the new Himalayan should be, and went and rode that bike, and they put not just the test riders but staff from all over the company, riders of all abilities, onto the bike and gave it a proper thrashing in a real world environment to decide if it met their expectations and if it's what they wanted. They use that to work out which elements are important, from chassis, handling, performance, spec on the dash, and end up building a bit of a picture as to where the new bike is going to fit. So this is where I got involved in organising one of these ride outs to test the bike and find out what it was, what it should be, and what it wasn't. So that for me was kind of the start of my involvement with this bike, being a part of that decision-making process and having an input into where the bike would end up ultimately in spec and performance terms, not just in outright performance, but also in rideability and ease of use. So I want to have a chat now with one of my friends who's kind of masterminded a lot of this project, overseen it from start to finish, which is Mark Wells, who's the Chief of Design at Royal Enfield, and just get his insight on how you go from, we've got a really cool bike that everyone loves, the Himalayan, to we need to make it new. What's it going to be? Mark, hello mate.
How are we doing, buddy? Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's now you get to see my side of the of the work. Look, first of all, I really appreciate being a part of this bike and being a part of the journey. It's meant a lot to me. You know my old life was as a design engineer, so to have a toe back in the door and an input to these things it's a dream come true for me. Obviously, you've been overseeing this bike from it being an idea in yours and a few people's heads through to the ones we're riding at the launch right now. Did it end up where you wanted it to be?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I think with any project, there are always going to be things where you think, I wish that was a little bit different, I wish that was better, but I think in general, the way the bike rides, the way that it's just easy and rideable, and the way that we've just taken everything up a notch. I think that was, from day one, that was what we wanted to do. We started with the old bike, which everybody loved so much, and we knew we wanted to take the characteristics of that bike and move that on but maintain what was great about it. And I think we've achieved that all the way through. So yeah, absolutely, there's things that you look at and go, I wouldn't have done it like that if we'd had another go at it. But yeah, I'd say 95% where we want it to be, 100% in terms of happiness about that.
I'm in a very fortunate position, having a life inside and outside of the industry, on as a consumer, as a journalist, and as an engineer, and being involved in this stuff. The amount of decisions and inputs, it's all very well to sit and go, this is what I want the next bike to be, this is what I want me personally, Royal Enfield, to do with the Himalayan, the Himi. But there's so many inputs from purchasing, manufacturing, the people who bolt it together on the assembly line. You know, what do you think has been the biggest challenge in getting through to production on this bike?
So it's 100% right. It's a massively complex sort of web of trade-offs that you have to make, and we, right from the very start, so from that process that you were talking about before, where we start looking at the attributes, we actually start rating the attributes and saying which of these are a must and which are a want, which are the things that we have to get into production and which are nice to have. So that's kind of where it starts, is you start listing out these attributes, and we take those from talking to customers. So we get the verbatims, we get we talk to customers and we get their language, we get them. So we don't say this has to have a 320mm brake disc or this has to have this spec of suspension. But what we say is, actually, I really like how that bike feels, or how I'd like that to be better. And then we then set those targets based on that. And so there's this kind of constant trade-off. So for example, seat height. So you take the seat height. We knew we wanted a low seat height on this bike. We also wanted improved ground clearance. Those two things are a trade-off. You push the bottom up, you push the top down. Where do you squeeze everything in the middle? It has to pop out somewhere else. Yeah. And so, you do those things. And what does seat height mean? So is that the height of the seat, or is that the width of the seat? Is it the compliance of the foam? Is it how much the suspension sags when you sit on it one up, when you're two up? All of those things define what we mean by seat height. The standover, so your ground axis, how you get the feet on the ground, all of that comes into the consumer's mind when they sit on the bike and go, has this got a high seat height or not? And all of those things end up being a trade-off. So you end up saying, well, okay, we're going to go for a low seat height, but so that means that we then have to move something else out the way somewhere else. So on this, we've done so when we started designing this, the very early stages in the concept phase, we had Steve and Ed and the rest of the guys that were looking at the early concept phase with Ben on the engine team. We kind of started looking at it and saying, well, we've got an airbox underneath here. That's in the way. How do we make that move out the way so we can get this down and this up and increase the ground clearance and increase the ground access, or improve the ground access? So, okay, we'll move that up there and we'll put that up there. That's great. That solves that problem. But then where does the fuel go? So we then think about where the fuel comes. And so you end up with this constant trade-off. And then this bike is, and all Royal Enfields are about, they've always got to be desirable, they've always got to be something you want to buy, you look at it and you think, I love that. There's got to be a story, there's got to be a purpose. This bike has tons of that, but they've got to be...
It's in the name.
Exactly, but they've also got to be really accessible. That's a real core brand attribute for us, is they've got to be accessible, both in terms of rideability, in terms of usability, but also in terms of price point and positioning. We're not making 30 grand motorcycles, we're making bikes that you can afford and buy and use. And so that then obviously has impacts as well. You've got to think about, okay, well, what are the cost trade-offs that we need to do for that? And so all of this, all the time, is this constant moving kind of amorphous blob that you're trying to get into the right direction and shepherd in the right way.
This bike isn't just built for us in the UK.
No.
Or the 45-year-old rider in the Midlands. This bike is a bike for a global motorcycle market, and not being funny, they sell more in India than they're ever going to sell in the United Kingdom.
Not necessarily. So for a bike like this, our business case is kind of split 50-50 for India and rest of the world. So absolutely, when you look at our 350s, the volumes are much, much higher in India than the rest of the world. But for a bike like this, where we've got really big ambitions for this in Europe, in North America, in South America, in LATAM, we think this has got a ton of potential, because we think the things that are true for any rider are true globally. So there are some things that are different, clearly. But, if you want a bike that is easy to ride, easy to take off-road, has great quality suspension, an engine that is tractable and works really well, it kind of doesn't matter where you are,
No.
And so for me, actually, it's something that we've always been I've pushed for a lot, is to make sure that we don't have different specs globally. We offer the same spec to all of our customers. It's about having a value proposition that works, kind of almost irrespective of where you are. What it does mean is you end up with different demographics, you end up with different people buying the product. Yeah. So you'll end up, in India we have a much younger customer base. Our average customer age in India is 25, whereas in other markets it's maybe double that. You know, so what you get is the consumers end up being different, but the bikes end up being kind of very similar globally.
Yeah, massive thank you for letting me be a small part in the massive cog that is developing and designing a new bike. It's been a special thing to share the journey, really, of what we first all sat down and spent till 3 a.m. discussing, and many late nights and bleary eyes and early mornings going out and putting that stuff to the test. I'm stoked to be on the launch riding the thing now. Massive thanks to you, and
thank you, buddy.
What I've seen so far, good job.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We're super proud, so thank you.
Hopefully it's given you a little bit of an insight. It's something we're quite privileged to have access to and to see and experience. The resounding impression for me is how manual and human the process has been with this bike. How much influence even I've had as an outsider, but lots of small people have had in shaping the bike and getting it to be something that, you know, everyone at Royal Enfield is super proud of, and I think it's going to be well received. It's not a big faceless company churning out bikes. It's people in the UK Tech Centre, people in India, people in the Spanish Testing Centre, all doing their best to make something that puts a massive smile on your face. I think that's pretty cool. Right, it's enough waffling, enough grown-up stuff. Let's get back to smashing through some corners and doing skids.
This thing is tough as nails. This thing is way too capable. Phew! So you get stuck in the river. This is where the Himi comes into its own. Decent ground access. Super tractable. Loads of grip.
Cool, that.
That's so good for that. Right, sand test. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Let's give the old sand ruts a go.
Okay, so we've been riding this bike for kind of 2.5 days, 2 days, a lot of mileage put onto it. And one thing's for sure, forget the bike, riding in India is freaking insane. I spent the first hour with one eye shut, like wincing, watching people go through gaps. And after that, you realize somehow it works. Like, no one seemed to crash into each other. There's all these like reputations about the roads being dangerous, but people make room, no one gets angry, do anything you like, as dumb as you like, just beat the horn first, and anything goes. So that like was a massive eye-opening experience. And forget this bike, if you ever get the chance to come and ride up here in the mountains in the north of India, just grab it with both hands. It is one of the coolest things I've ever done.
There's a sign that says sliding point. It's the best road ever. Sliding point, yeah it is.